Welcome back to another episode of Radio Pulso, also known as the Boyle Heights Beat podcast. My name is Kate Valdez, and joining me today is my co-host Kevin Martinez. How are you today, Kevin?
Hi Kate, nice to see you again. I'm doing really good. It's been a good day. Kind of warm, but really good.
We're in the heat of the summer,
Yes.
and also in a huge drought, so save water, y'all. Yeah, well, with that being said, just really quickly, we want our audience to know that we are a radio program and podcast brought to you by the community news outlet Boyle Heights Beat. This is a program that trains local high school students to publish a community newspaper, and it also produces this very own podcast. And we just actually published our latest edition, so if y'all haven't checked it out, please do so.
Yes. And on today's episode, we wanted to talk about the 6th Street Bridge that just opened up in early July. The Boyhead Speed team went to the grand opening of the 6th Street Viaduct on July 9th.
Yeah, it was really great seeing it all come together after 4 years of it being in construction. We basically went out and spoke to a few people about how they felt with the bridge being opened. And as we were walking on the bridge, we noticed there was a big group of people, and we overheard them telling people that some of their family members helped build the bridge.
Yeah, and we approached them, and our reporter Alex Medina had the chance to talk to Martin Gomez and Monique Galavis, an uncle niece duo who worked on the 6th Street Bridge for the past 4 years. Martin says they had other family members who worked on the bridge with them. Let's take a listen.
My name is Martin Gomez. My niece right here, Monique. And that's why we're here, to build a beautiful bridge. I've never built one like it. I don't think I'll ever build another one like it, but I'm proud to say that I'm part of this. Right?
What was your experience like working on the bridge?
I liked it. I worked with family mostly, so it brought us all closer. It was a good experience. Good first bridge experience
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
to
very.
experience, yeah.
She learned a lot, And her dad taught her a lot. I taught her a little bit, but her dad taught her a lot. She knows how to run a saw, a nail gun, and everything. You ask her, she knows how to use all her tools. I'm proud of her.
And what are you all most looking forward to now that the bridge is open? Or
To drive on it. I'm gonna drive on this bridge. I built it, so yeah.
It was really nice to know that many of the construction workers were actually female, and I'm pretty sure that the architect Michael Maltzman prided himself in having staffed many females for this specific project.
Yeah, I also think it's just really dope that Gente were a part of this project. You can actually
sure.
hear how proud Martin and Monique just sounded, and I just remember them saying, that they built this bridge, and you can see just how excited and proud they are about themselves and what they represent to the community.
And they were like a huge group. So like everybody was just there, super excited to celebrate with them, like the grand opening. And they just seemed really, really proud of them as well, just to be a part of that like excitement.
Yeah, like I would be proud too.
I know, right? Yes.
Like I would tell my kids and then my grandkids, like, yo, I built that.
That's like a staple, yeah. Like imagine like, oh yeah, my uncle built this bridge. Like what? Like that's crazy.
For sure. So Alex also had the chance to interview Ruby Wu, 13, who was standing next to her 1948 Chevrolet Fleetline, Bombita Betty, and was excited to drive her car on the bridge. Let's take a listen to her interview.
I'm Ruby.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I'm here with Boy Heights Beat. Yeah, and can you tell me a little bit about why you're out here today on the 6th Street viaduct opening?
Why I'm here today? Well, I am honored and privileged to be here to have my car Bombita Betty, a 1948 Chevrolet Fleetline. She's literally the only 40s car on this bridge. So she's representing that era of the 1940s. Myself, my great-grandpa was a pachuco back in the day, so I kind of am into that style, if you will. And it's kind of embedded in my bones and in my blood. So being here today to represent not only family, my great-grandpa actually, and my grandpa, they used to be coyotes. They would drive families over from behind the border and help them establish their lives here. And so that bridge and this bridge, is it's not only a metaphorical puente, for keeping us united and allowing that transition, if you will, but just honoring the history, honoring the fact that this is a momentous occasion for the city of Los Angeles, recognizing that there's so much historically behind the past bridge, and now getting to make some new moments here. So I'm so happy to be here. Appreciate you. So I took several photos on the old bridge. I know that I'm in love with the old architecture from the 1940s, the 20s, 30s, etc. The old riveting and all of that. So I had some nice memories under the bridge, and driving over and getting just that scenic view and driving into Boyle Heights because I'm from Boyle Heights. So driving into home or driving into the city from home, just so beautiful. So something that you can't capture in words, really. So miss the old bridge, but definitely happy to have this one and to be out and enjoying the birthday. Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to with the bridge now being open?
Definitely the new memories. The new memories, driving her into downtown, not having to go on the freeways and stuff to get into downtown. And some of my favorite restaurants are right over the bridge. So definitely excited for that. For new opportunities that are going to come, and the people who will be able to develop new experiences on this bridge and for it to have new meaning to new different people.
And then my last question: can you just tell me a little bit about like what's your favorite thing about your car?
Okay, so Bombita Betty, her first owner was actually killed in the car, unfortunately, but there are bullet holes in the grill. So that is my favorite feature of this vehicle. Secondary favorite thing is that I put on the most miles on her. The first owner barely drove her. Second put on maybe a couple hundred, and I put on 5,000 miles on the car. So really happy about that.
Thank you so much. And just one last question: can you tell me a little bit about the fit today?
Oh yes. So this is from pop-up mercadito something, I don't know. I went to a Dia de los Muertos event, but the style is from the 1940s, the off-the-shoulder. I was wearing vintage earlier, and my homegirl was like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know about that." So I changed the outfit real quick last minute. That's a siren. That's a classic sound of the lowrider community. So really happy that you guys got to hear that. That's a perfect way to end things.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Yeah, Ruby Woo was just like a naturally like a great storyteller. She actually shared with me that Bombita Betty actually has a bullet hole like in the front, the front bender of like the car, and you could actually see it like if you were standing there in the flesh. There's like that bullet hole like right there on the front bumper, and I was like, bro, like that's crazy.
Did she ask or did she share how that happened?
She shared the story because I was obviously interested. Like I wanted to know like the context of the car, and then she not overshared. She just shared about the bullet hole, and it's something that she prides herself in with the car itself. Like there's just so many stories that surrounds her and the car. Like it's like a whole ass relationship. So, and for myself, like just walking down the bridge, it was like really really exciting and just enjoying the ambiance. There was a bunch of like pop-up vendors, a lot of food options, and I mean, let's not leave out that La Sonora Dinamita was there in the flesh too, and I mean the performance was like outstanding. It was just like a really really great time.
It was a party.
It was a whole ass party, yeah, like on a bridge, and it was just really exciting to see a bunch of different people from Boyle Heights, from downtown LA, people that were just tourists, literally tourists coming to LA, and that they had the chance to be a part of this event.
Have you been back since the day that the event happened?
I've only actually driven down it once after that. Yeah, I don't really live nearby, so I have to go out of my way just to like be on the bridge. And I was on my way to the flower market in downtown when I took the 6th Street, but that was literally the only time.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes go out of my way just to cross the bridge, even though I could technically take the 4th or like the First Street bridge. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna drive to the 6th Street bridge.
And then it's so funny that you say that because we get to the flower market and my sister and I were driving separate cars because she had to go to work after that, and she's like, bro, like you made us drive all through Boyle Heights just to get to the flower market when we could have just taken the 5. And I was like, but like I wanted to drive down the 6th Street bridge, and she was so upset because it took us like 20 minutes when it should take you like 10 to get to the flower market from my house.
With these gas prices too.
Yeah, that too.
But it was worth it.
It was worth it. No, yeah, and it was like early morning, so there wasn't a bunch of cars on it, and the skyline was like super clear that morning. So yeah, I mean it's an experience. Like if anyone hasn't done it yet, like I would highly recommend that you do it.
Yeah, and I remember seeing like the first few weeks, like people would go at night and it gets packed. Like it's like a whole parade basically, and like what should take less than a minute to cross the bridge, like people would say it would take them like at least 5 minutes.
Or maybe even more, or like 10 minutes or so.
10 minutes.
It's like legit like a hangout spot now. It's like let's just hit up the 6th Street bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been a couple of times. The best times I've found that's just breathtaking to just drive through is like sunset.
Sunset.
Um,
Yeah.
it's nice.
There's been like a handful of times when I'm just on Instagram and I always like I see people's stories and some people are taking pictures of the sunset. I'm like, oh, like I know where you're at because it's yeah, it's pretty breathtaking. But while there was much excitement about the bridge opening in the beginning, it actually later turned to a safety issue, a safety concern after ongoing cases of illegal and unsafe activity on the bridge. There were numerous street takeovers, graffiti, vandalism, crashes, parked cars, and dangerous social media stunts during the first couple of weeks that it opened. For now, things seem to be doing a little bit better, but obviously there are still a lot of safety concerns that the bridge still brings.
Many people have expressed concerns about the bike lane on the bridge, voicing that the rubber bollards aren't that protective of cyclists if a car were to run into it. Other people have mentioned that the concrete barrier should have been placed as a division between the road and the bike lane, making it so that both the bike lane and pedestrian sidewalk are more protected from oncoming traffic. Coming up next, we'll have Pablo de la Hoya, who also happens to be a Boyle Heights Speed photography mentor, talk about his experience on the bridge and what safety concerns he has as a cyclist.
Pablo de la Hoya is a photographer and videographer based in East Los Angeles. His work has appeared in YR Media, KQED, and NPR. He currently works as the head of community engagement and success for Reach. Pablo is also a cycling enthusiast who rides his bike across LA County. So with us today is Pablo de la Hoya. Let the audience know how are you today, Pablo?
Doing well. A little hot, but doing okay.
For sure, yeah. It's summer's definitely picking up this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what were your thoughts when it was announced back in 2016 that the 6th Street Bridge was going to be rebuilt?
Well, back in 2016, when they initially said that it needed to be rebuilt, it kind of made sense. The infrastructure of it and the possibility of it collapsing in case of like a major earthquake is obviously very scary. So if it needed to be rebuilt for that, great. But there is some emotion attached because growing up in LA and Boyle Heights in East LA, that bridge is like so commonly known, thanks to the movies, thanks to trying to get to downtown, etc. Especially like the fashion district and the flower district. So yeah, it was a little bit of a kind of like bittersweet moment.
Of course. You do bring up how it was a little bit iconic, but did it have any personal connections or ties to you personally?
Yeah, so as I grew up, I got really into cars and driving around. So as you can imagine, cruising became a part of my life. So going across the bridges, both the 6th Street and the 4th Street Bridge was like a common thing for me.
For sure. And when you talk about cruising, do you mean like how how it's really common amongst like the Latinx culture and community? People have like vintage cars and they cruise down the streets. Do you fall under that spectrum, or it was just like cruising in your car with some friends?
It's more of just like cruising with my car because I drive a more modern Mustang.
Oh, I see.
So it's like the beginning of my drive was just to go through downtown, take in all the lights, and then I would go up to like Angeles Crest Highway or Pacific Coast Highway.
Very nice, very nice. So let's talk about now. So now that it is rebuilt and it's officially opened, what were your initial thoughts of the newly built bridge?
My first thoughts going up to the bridge, because I hadn't really looked at it from afar or gotten any sense for what it's actually starting to look like, was that it looked smaller than it is from the outside. Until you actually drive onto it and start walking on the bridge, it feels a lot smaller than it is. But overall, it's a pretty cool design. The arches are really cool and kind of bring the old elements of the bridge into the new, into the future. So it's really nice.
When you first saw it for the first time, what excited you the most about it? Like when you just saw it, like first reactions?
Initially, I was excited that there was a walkway that was separated from the cars and that there was a bike lane. Although from like the initial photos, it didn't seem like there was a bike lane. And then actually going and seeing it, I saw that there was a bike lane. So that was pretty cool.
It's my understanding that you're like a diehard cyclist and you love cycling.
Yeah.
So as a cyclist, what has been your experience cycling the bridge, if you have already or haven't?
Yeah, so I have ridden across the bridge when it initially opened on Sunday, so that meant that it was still close to cars. And that experience was great because there's no cars.
Right.
But knowing, what's happened since then, with like the takeovers and people driving recklessly on the bridge, it is a little concerning that the bike lane isn't fully protected,
Right.
meaning that if a car loses control or is not paying attention, they can easily veer into the bike lane and hit someone.
Right. Within the bike lane itself, outside of there being the danger of the cars, was there anything else that wasn't up to par amongst you or like your fellow cyclist friends that thought like that's not safe? I really should have reconsidered that.
Not necessarily, no. The pavement isn't the greatest. It's not like super smooth, which makes sense. It's not like compared to the walkway where pedestrians are walking. The pavement of the bike lane is very much the same pavement of the driving lane.
I see.
And it just, to me, that the surface of the road looks like it's unfinished. It's like very rough, and in some parts it's more rough than others. So it's almost like typical LA. The road is already kind of cracked up and not looking great.
And why is that an issue for most cyclists like yourself?
It really just depends on the type of bike that someone's riding. The thinner the tires, the easier it is to lose control if there's a bump in the surface or if there's a crack. But all in all, there shouldn't be too much of an issue with the actual surface of it. There is more so a problem with like the openings where they have, like, I'm assuming it's so that the water can drain off the bridge when it rains, if it ever rains.
Okay.
The actual manhole covers are very open, so it makes it possible that as a cyclist, your tires can actually seep in there. But it looks like they did a good enough job to prevent that. It just for me, from the from looking at the outside in, I personally would probably avoid that.
Right.
Riding across the bridge. Yeah.
So with your cyclist background, what does a solution look like for you in this instance? Where you're talking about like the possible rain drain or the actual pavement? What could they have done better, essentially?
Yeah, luckily there's plenty of great examples across the county and city of bike lanes that have done this and done it well. The river paths are somewhat better paved, especially the newer ones, like the Alley River Path around Griffith Park and the Autry Museum. That there is actually really well paved. And then even like the San Gabriel River Bike Trail is actually pretty well paved. So having like a smoother surface, I think, would help a lot. But then also, having more separation between the rider and the car would be great. Not just across the bridge, but in more places across the city and the county.
Right. Has it disencouraged you like at all to continue cycling on the bridge, or it's not really that big of a problem to you?
Personally, I probably would never ride across the bridge.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because, well, yeah, one, because it's very inaccessible to me as someone that starts by riding in East LA. The only way I can get from where I'm living to the start of a bike lane is to take the Gold Line or to go through like neighborhood streets to avoid all the major streets where accidents are more likely to happen. So personally, I probably wouldn't ride it anymore. The same reason why I don't ride my bike in downtown LA, because where there are bike lanes, there's often cars parked inside of the bike lanes, or unfortunately, there's also homeless encampments that take over the bike lanes.
Right. So you don't go out of your way to bike just the streets of LA, right? Like you're very specific about finding a bike lane just for cyclists yourselves.
Yeah, so a lot of the places where I normally cycle are Griffith Park, and recently they actually closed a major road along the park that leads to a part of the road where it's kind of like hiking trail, kind of paved road. So it's opened up the possibility of having more road and space for cyclists with less worry about cars coming through. So that's been great. We cycle there a lot with my friends. Also in Pasadena, where the Rose Bowl is, mostly because it's quieter. So it lends itself to having a little bit more open, casual ride than having to look over your shoulder very often.
Right. I'm realizing that you don't typically cycle in Boyle Heights or East LA at all. You always have to go to like a different city or a different county. So how does that make you feel that you can't really bike in your hometown of East LA / Boyle Heights?
Yeah, so as a non-commuter, I have like a non-cycling commuter, I have the luxury of picking where I ride.
Right.
But it is very disheartening to have to either drive to where I ride my bike or ride out of my way to get to the location, right? So like I'll have to take very long detours to avoid major streets to eventually get to where I want to get to. But I think for me, what really concerns me is the safety for commuters, because I have that luxury of driving, but many don't. And that is a lot of the reason why we see cyclists on the sidewalks here in East LA and Boyle
Right.
Heights. Because it's just not safe to ride like on Cesar Chavez anywhere on the street.
Right. Do you feel like the 6th Street Viaduct is a step towards the right direction at all, even though it has its its disadvantages for most cyclists? But do you at least recognize that they're attempting to go in the right direction?
That's hard to answer, but in summary, yes and no. Yes, because at least there's a bike lane.
Right.
No, because it just further proves that they don't care enough to make it safe enough for everyone. Because in reality, a fully protected bike lane is not much more different than what they already built.
Right.
If they just took what they built for pedestrians and then added another layer to it,
Right.
done, problem solved.
Right.
But the reality, like the so-called protected bike lane that they've already created has already been ran over. We've seen the videos of a white car that was already going pretty slow, still managed to get over the bumps and then
Right.
hit the concrete wall. So still pretty dangerous.
So with all your safety concerns, do you ever see yourself like trying to advocate for the community for more a safer road for most cyclists?
Yeah, I try to. I live in East LA, which technically is an LA city, but there was recently a survey going around for LA City to get something on the ballot to create more space for cycling. They not necessarily meaning more bike lanes around the city, but more so creating more spaces for bikes that are designated bike zones, which is really great to see that initiative happening. Fortunately, I couldn't sign it because of my zip code, which is sad. But I would love to see, East LA, Hilda Solis kind of step up and create more bike lanes in East LA because, to my knowledge, there's one, and it goes through Mednick between like Floral and Whittier Boulevard.
Okay.
I think there's others, but that's the main one that I remember, and that's pretty disappointing.
Right. No, yeah, that's really disappointing. This is news to me. As far as I was concerned, I just know the one right here on First Street. Like it goes for a long stretch.
And then you get to East LA and it ends.
And it ends. Oh, yeah. Right. So that's exactly the issue. So what would your advice be as a cyclist to just like regular people? Like what can we do to help y'all out in this like struggle to advocate for more bike lanes and safety as well?
Yeah, I think the really important thing for everyone else to know about cyclists is that we are technically considered vehicles by the city, but we are not considered vehicles by other drivers, which is very sad because drivers are in cars that weigh a lot, and cyclists are on a bike that is not protecting them at all. The only protection we have is our helmets. And even then, helmets are not legally required in the state of California for anyone over the age of 18. So there's that as well, unfortunately. But it's really up to each individual person to choose whether to wear a helmet. But the point I was trying to make is that as a driver, just be a little bit more aware and cognizant to the fact that a rider on the road has as much of a legality to be there
for sure
as you do.
Of course. And just for context, like how long have you actually been cycling?
Yeah, so I'm what I'm calling myself a COVID cyclist because I started riding my bike when the pandemic started. So I was one of the people that got a bike during the pandemic and created a huge short of bikes across the city and the country. But yeah, so I've been riding since 2020, so a little over 2 years now.
Nice. And would you recommend it?
Yes, 100%. I know that there's a lot of issues with safety concerns and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's a great way to get out, explore your city, and exercise.
Nice. Well, that's a really good note to leave it at. But do you have anything else to add for our audience members that are listening?
Nope, that's it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Pablo, for sharing your insight, for being a cyclist in LA, and just for sharing why it's so important that our congressman, our mayor, and other representatives really bent down on like safety reasons and why it's important to have safety when it comes to bike lanes. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
It was great listening to Pablo talk about his safety concerns regarding the bridge as a cyclist, and he's also reminded me how I could do my own part being an active commuter in the East LA, Boyle Heights area. and how we should all just be respectful to our fellow cyclists on the streets. And listening to Pablo talk about his cycling experiences has really motivated me to start biking more often as well, since I do have my own bike, but for some reason I don't use it as much as I should. I hope y'all enjoyed listening to him as much as I enjoyed talking to him.
Well, that's a wrap for our Radio Pulso podcast. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Kevin Martinez.
And I'm Kate Valdez. And if you ever want to pitch us an idea for the radio show or our newspaper, you can send us an email at boyleheightsbeat@gmail.com. That's boyleheightsbeat@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from all of you, as we do pride ourselves in offering noticias por y para la comunidad. Or we'd even love to have you on our show. Also, make sure to check us out on social media to stay up to date. You can follow our Radio Pulso Instagram account at Radio Pulso. That's RRADIOPULSO.
And thanks to the people who make Boyle Heights Beat possible, especially Chris Kelly and Antonio Mejia Rentas. And a huge thank you to our radio producer, Jackie Ramirez. You'll hear from us soon. Don't forget to tune in. Until then, suerte Boyle Heights. Nos vemos en la calle.